Welcome to the Indian Film Festival of Cincinnati. I am Rati Apana. I'm the founder and the director of the festival. Now, each year we bring you some very well-crafted films in the features, documentaries, and the shorts categories from South Asian filmmakers who are spread across the globe. Join us today with director Sushrut Jain of the film Tenant. And if you haven't seen the Tenant, this is a must-see at the festival. Try and grab a chance to get to see it. Sushrut Jain is an award-winning filmmaker. He's driven by the desire to capture the drama of everyday Indian life, and that is what you will see in this film. He was born and raised in Mumbai and currently lives in Washington, D.C. Sushrut came to the United States to pursue graduate work in economics at Stanford University. And of course, like so many Indians, he is very involved in trying to learn ways to solve problems that he saw growing up in the India that he knew. But his desire for a more humanistic approach to these problems, and of course, a passion for storytelling, which comes through so well in this film, eventually led him to take some time off from being an economist to graduate, to study film at USC, and then graduate from there. His debut short film, Andheri, in 2009, was an official selection at the Clermont-Ferrand Festival, and then went on to play in over 40 film festivals. He then directed a feature-length documentary centered around the 2011, what exactly was that incident? Do you care to tell me? It was
World Cup of Cricket that happened in India in 2011.
World Cup cricket.
Yeah.
And Tenant is an entertaining drama that he now directed about a year ago. And joining us here is Mr. Jain. Mr. Jain, welcome.
Thank you.
I have to tell you, we really enjoyed watching this social drama. It had some very subtle messages in it and some very stark messages in it as well. And I'm sure you always get the question, well, you know, where did you get this inspiration? But I just want you to sort of recollect the moment when you thought, hey, here's a subject that I want to explore.
Sure.
And here's the reason why. And I want to know your why.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I had finished making my documentary about the sport of cricket in India, in which I followed these three people for whom the sport of cricket was a way out of poverty or out of a difficult life. And it was a very gritty kind of documentary that looked at real everyday life in India. And after that was finished, you know, I started thinking, what do I want to do next? I want to do a narrative. I want to write a story. And I was searching for inspiration, and I started looking inward and started looking at my family. And I grew up in Mumbai with three elder sisters. And I remember, you know, in about 10 years ago or so, we started getting a lot of bad news about incidents related to young women in India. You know, some horrible, horrible things that were happening, and they were, you know, in the news. And I remember a lot of people in India at the time saying, "Oh, this is terrible. It's never happened before. You know, there's something has changed in India." And people are, we're talking about sexual assault things and all of that has changed. And I remember thinking that, well, maybe it's more in the news, but there was always this thing underneath the surface where the rules for women in Indian cities, no matter how modern they were different than the rules for men. And so I started talking to my sisters, you know, about their experiences and I was younger than them, so I didn't really know back then. But the more I talked to them, the more I it confirmed that yes, indeed, they had to play by different rules in the very same world that I was living in, and you know, what you wear, how direct your gaze is back at somebody, you know, what you're expected to do in your personal life, how long you're expected or allowed to be single by society, all of these unwritten rules that, you know, in middle class India that young women had to follow that men don't. And so I started to think, well, how can I do this in a movie without being just to hit people over the head. It's not something new. So how do I tell the story in an interesting and fun way even? And so I started to develop this idea of first of the woman and who she would be, an interesting modern woman who has a personal life, a dating life,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and is single into her 30s, right? Something that is still comes with a certain taboo in India. And then I thought, well, to make it fun, let's tell a story about being a young boy in India, which is something I know. And so I started looking at the whole story from the perspective of this young boy, and then his own problems as he's turning into, he's going through puberty and all of that. And then throw in this beautiful single woman who has a mind of her own, and in this middle class patriarchal society, and you've got the makings of a story. And then I started to populate it with all the beautiful things that we know about Indian society, which is, your neighbors are like your family.
Yeah.
They're also, in and out of your life. Everybody's judgmental when they shouldn't be, and you don't get to escape that. And it's also beautiful. So I wanted to tell a story with a tapestry of that entire community, and that's what I did with the Tenant.
That was lovely. The young boy, you had a terrific actor. Tell me a bit about him. Where is he from?
Sure, yeah. Rudraksh Jaiswal is his name. Rudy, he went by, and Rudy was fantastic. We knew that the movie would hinge on that actor who we found, and it's very difficult to find a good child actor that really understands the role. And we did massive auditions. I had a casting director in India who was very acclaimed, who was on the film, and he had a whole machinery for bringing in kids in Bombay to audition. But a lot of these kids, from that age of 10 to 15, they're used to acting in commercials and more commercial type TV and things. And in that world, you end up overacting and trying to be cute. So we went through dozens and dozens and dozens of auditions, for many of which I sat in the room, for many of which I just got a videotape at the end of the day, but it wasn't going well. These kids were not understanding the role. They were pretending to be cute all the time. And then one day I remember, like, we were starting to give up, and I walked into the audition room and I saw this one boy, and he was up there and he did the scene very serious, very thoughtful, and did not overact. And I was like, oh, this kid even looks what I imagined it to be. And so then I gave him a second scene, which I don't usually give other kids, and he learned it on the spot. He was very studious, and then he did that scene beautifully. And I said, this is the guy. And the funny thing is, I go back, this was never my intention, but I look at photographs of myself when I was his age, and we actually look very similar, even though there's nothing autobiographical in this story, but it was kind of a wonderful coincidence, and we used to laugh about it. And he's a brilliant actor. And right when he was working on my film, he also got cast in a major Hollywood blockbuster on Netflix, opposite Chris Hemsworth in the lead role. So it's called Extraction. And so Rudy has blown up in India. He's a star, but he got a start with the Tenant.
Ooh, that sounds amazing. That sounds really interesting. The Was it difficult working with him though on set, with a child? Does it have it as a director? What do you have to change in order to work with a child on the set?
I think that it wasn't so much on set, because we spent like 10 days of rehearsal before we turned the camera on. So I worked with Shamita Shetty. I worked with Rudy in privately in scenes, working the ideas behind the character, how he feels, what is required here, all of that. So by the time we got on set, everybody knew, all the actors knew what they had to do. The challenge with kids is that you don't want them to get into trying to please you as the director, because very quickly we had, strangely, like a father-son bond. He really looked up to me and he wanted to please me, and I kept trying to tell him to not worry about me. But the thing that I saw with all the kid actors in our film was they were extremely professional. And there is a culture of movie making and filmmaking in India, that in Bombay especially, that is so prevalent. These kids have all had experience in commercials and things, so they know they've worked in much worse conditions, and so they already understand how to deliver. So I never, I mean, if anything, it's more complicated with the adults
It is.
because,
Ah,
you know, because they come with all these ideas about how they need to appear,
yeah.
and you have to strip those away and say, no, you have to trust me as the director and not do those things that you're used to doing. So they've learned bad habits. You know, in Indian acting, this is the last thing I'll say. Indian acting it can often be extremely over expressive, and I had to train some of my adult actors to pull back and to say, don't, you wouldn't do that in real life. So let's go for real life. Let's not go for movie life. And
Ah,
that was a training that I think all of them really enjoyed and appreciated. And I think you can see the outcome
yes,
in the movie.
yes. It was extremely natural, the entire film. Um, I also like the little boy, the friend of Rudy's.
Yeah,
He was very cute as well.
he was.
And you know, and
Yes.
just that camaraderie and that empathy that was evoked between them, it really came through. Tell me about the character who sort of barges into her room, Mr. Mishra, the chairman.
Yeah. So, uh, look, Mr. Mishra is based on, if anybody grew up in a middle class Indian society, they call it housing society. There's always a few uncles in the building who are like that, who are,
Mhm.
very bossy, but also kind of creepy. And, there were those in my building when I was growing up. And I just, you know, when I wrote that character and when Swanand Kirkire, read it, Swanand knew me. He was like, I know this guy. He's like, you don't have to tell me anything. I know this guy. He thinks he's a good guy, but he's has embodies all the patriarchal nonsense that we have in mainstream India today, where they're very entitled men who think that they're a big deal for no reason, and that any woman would be interested in them. And they bring that into their personal lives. They treat their wives usually very badly. They don't understand romance from the female perspective at all because it's never been required of them. um, they never had to woo a woman, and they don't know how to do it. And so, and yet they have incredible self-confidence that comes from a society that really coddles men.
Does. It
you know
really does. Yeah, it really does. And I think that was a very strong message that this film sent out. And in a way, I think all the men were painted in very poor light for their actions.
well,
And
but I mean, at the same time, like the person who played the boy's father, the main boy's father, I mean, I don't think he was painted in a poor light. I thought he was just a man who was trying to make his wife happy, but he didn't know how,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
he had to learn it.
I mean, I don't mean to say a poor light, really. I would say in the correct light, because
Yeah.
it is a patriarchy, and people are like that. And even with the Rudy's parents, I mean, the father was a weak person in the sense he was only involved with himself, and really, like you said, he didn't know how to woo his wife or didn't know what she needed or what was important. And it took a young man to tell him, hey, she just needs to be noticed.
Mhm,
I mean, that was huge.
mhm.
That was absolutely huge. And I think a very strong message uh, for the men in our society,
Yeah.
or at least the Indian society. Uh,
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, so recollect a fun moment from the film.
Oh my God, we had so many. We had so much fun. Our star, Shamita Shetty.
Yeah.
She's for people who know Bollywood, they know Shamita was a star. Maybe 10, 11 years ago, she did a couple of massive films opposite Amitabh Bachchan with Shah Rukh Khan and whatever. And her sister Shilpa Shetty is a huge movie star in India as well. And Shamita is, getting her on the film. It was a difficult choice because people were telling us, she's a Bollywood star. What are you doing? But I knew by talking to her that she was incredibly intelligent and sensitive and understood the role. And she was, she's beautiful, so she was perfect for the role. And she brought a lot of game to the set, in terms of professionalism, and everybody respected that. And I remember, she had there was a scene in the movie where she had to dance with a bottle of, with a glass of whiskey in her hand, alone in her room at night. She's sad, she's listening to some jazz, and she's dancing. And she's a fantastic dancer. She's been a dancer. So she did that dance scene very easily, and it was beautiful. It was the end of the night. My entire crew was tired and ready to go home. There were maybe 30 of us crowded into this like tiny apartment room. So when it was done, and I was playing the music over and over from my phone onto a Bluetooth speaker, and she was like, "All right, well, did you get it?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Let's do one more take." And just for fun, I clicked to a Bollywood song. It was a funny song, like a street dance song called "Aya Hai Raja Logo de Logo," which people might know from the 80s or 90s. And it's a very like fun street dance. And she immediately switched and started dancing to it for fun. And all of us just started applauding and laughing, and it was amazing. She held that's a beautiful moment that we all remember. That
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
she's such a great dancer that she had the room. So that was fun.
Ah, lovely.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
what's next for this film?
So we are actually playing at a few festivals now. Because of the pandemic, everything just got hit, and we didn't play at festivals that we were selected at. Those select festivals didn't happen. Some of them are happening this year, in person. Even we're hoping. So there was one in Dallas that was supposed to be the first one in April 2020. Kept getting pushed, and we finally were like, oh, October 2021, we're going to play there. And now Texas is raging again, with the pandemic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it might get pushed again. I'm playing at a festival in Estonia, which is a very respected festival called the Talon Black Nights Festival. And I might actually go there in November for the festival. And we're also working on, the film got sold to Sky Films in the UK. So it's actually available in the UK. People can watch it.
Mhm.
The Tenant, you should go see it.
Mhm.
And we are also working currently on a digital platform global deal with a major digital platform, but it's taken a long time,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it'll happen. But if it does, then everybody in the world will be able to see The Tenant, and I'm really excited about that.
Yes, I mean, I would love to see it on Netflix or Amazon. This is the kind of movie that we're all hoping to see. And I know several of my friends saw the film, and it's in English. It was easy. Most of it is in English or subtitled, and it was really easy for folks to follow. And they just absolutely loved the film. And that was a question they asked me. They said, "Why aren't we seeing this on Netflix?"
It's
And
a
I said,
great question. I mean, there is something, the same old studio sort of, I don't want to say favoritism or whatever. It's like if you're outside the industry and you bring in something really good, it's not often about the content, in my opinion. It's like about who you know. I don't know why this has not been an automatic buy on Netflix or Amazon. It's been a struggle. The pandemic probably made it worse. But yeah, I mean, you look at the stuff that's on there and you're like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, but Tenant is far superior to most of these films, and
Oh, it
it should.
definitely is.
Yeah,
I totally agree. It definitely is. And for all of those listening, please check out this film, The Tenant. It's an awesome film. You'll love it. You'll be entertained. And at the same time, Mr. Jain brings some very strong social messages that all of us need to imbibe. So thank you so much, Mr. Jain. Thank you for being here with us.
absolutely.
And
It was
we
a pleasure.
look forward to seeing your film on different platforms very soon. And I hope Netflix is listening.
Thank you so much, and thank you for organizing the festival. It's really important that we have, festivals that promote these types of films and show Western audiences as well as Indians here, that there is cinema outside of Bollywood and that it's really good. So,
Yes, and it is absolutely well made film. Thank you again. This was really awesome. Thank you.